Mail here, back with my multi-video part series on ancient Egypt. In my last video, I talked about a class of Egyptian artifacts that I think are pretty cool, but aren't maybe as visually fancy as a lot of the steles that you see in museums. But they are still, like I said, pretty cool for me, and you can get a lot of different windows into the ancient Egyptian cultures by looking at them. And these are Ostracan. So I talked about how both museums, because they've digitized their collections, you can tend to see both the Astrakhan that they have on view and the Ostraca that they don't. And then how Wiki Commons has digitized lists and pages of Astrakhan collections that are in museums in different parts of the world. So we are going to start with the Metropolitan Museum online collection search and see what type of ostraca they have in their collection. So here I've already typed the parameters that I want in. I've put that they have the image that's from the Egyptian collection and that the image is open access because I'm trying to avoid running into any copyright issues. So we're going to start with this one here. And actually, before we start with this one, I'm just going to scan down the page so you can see the variety of ostraca that are in these collections. So ostraca can be either text, so like these examples here, or text plus figural images, or just figural images. And as I said, you see them all the way past the New Kingdom. So I'm just going to kind of click on a random textual ostracan here. And this is one that is not on view, and it dates from the late period to Ptolemaic period, and it's one of the textual ostraca. All right. So because they're more interesting to look at, or maybe more interesting to look at for kind of non-Egyptologists, I'm going to stick mostly with the figural ones or figural plus text ones that show up in this collection search. And I'm on I think the second page. I'm just going down, or sorry, I'm on the third page. So we are going to start with this Ostracan here, which is from the Ramesside period, which is a sub period within the New Kingdom. So that's why in terms of the date, it has New Kingdom, comma, Ramesside period, because the New Kingdom is one of those periods that is long enough that there's political and artistic changes within it that create these sub periods, one of which is the Ramesside. So this is also an interesting one because it gives you a sense of how visually pleasing these can be. And sorry, I'm trying to get this screen share out of, nope, sorry, that doesn't work. Out of here so you can see the full thing, because I know that that is not ideal. So I apologize that this is kind of blocking the full view. But what Egyptologists think this particular ostracan depicts is a animal in some kind of a fable or literary text in the first register here. That's who the monkey is. And then a princess or sketch of a royal figure in the bottom register below. And there, one of the clues that this is a princess or an adolescent possibly is because the female figure has the side lock of youth in terms of her hairstyle here. which was in the Egyptian art and iconography. The side lock of youth was one of their ways to represent non-adults. And this is a case where if we look at provenance, the museum's records just have that it was given to the museum by Charles K. Wilkinson in 1960. So unfortunately, they don't really have a lot of information on where exactly in Egypt it was found. Okay, now we're going to go back. Now we're back to the main collection page, and I'm just kind of scrolling down here. This is, and I am going to click on just one Ostracan that is textually based, partly because it gives you a sense of the variety of languages that you see in Egypt. So on a lot of the stelas that I was showing in my previous content, that is the full formal hieroglyphic language. But E ancient Egypt also at different points in time also had writings that were more shorthand and less formal, and hieratic is one of those. So this is an Ostracan in hieratic rather than the full formal hieroglyphic. This is another one that they can't tell exactly what year date, but it's some point from the New Kingdom Ramesside period to possibly the late period. And this is one of the ones that it looks like they have a little bit more information on the provenance and where they found it. So if we go to the overview first, it tells you that they got it from the region of Thebes, and then it looks like this is one of the objects because the Metropolitan throughout the parts of the 19th and 20th century sponsored excavations in different areas of Egypt, and so that's how they acquired some of their objects. And from the information that we see in the both in the overview, this last line here, so Metropolitan Museum excavations 1918 to 1919, and then the provenance, that tells you that this is one of those objects. That's partly why we have more detailed info on where this particular Ostracan was found. So not just that it was found in the general region of Thebes, but a particular site within Thebes. Sorry, I just have a doggy and she got up, so I'm just making sure that we're not about to get people that are coming home. Okay. Porter, do you want to go outside and get busy? I'm just going to step away for a minute and see if the doggy needs to use the bathroom. I will be back. Porter, do you want to go get busy or you just move it? Move it? So we are going to get back into it here. Scroll down a little bit more. We're going to go back to focusing on more figural Ostracan or Ostraca rather than textual. So this is an Ostracan, which is just the term for one piece, one fragment of Ostraca that shows you the god Sobek. And this is one of the ones that is on view. And the image itself is copyrighted. So that's partly why I didn't copy or paste it, but it does fall within the public domain. And this is another one that based on the iconography and what's depicted and kind of how it's drawn, Egyptologists think it dates from the Ramesside period within the New Kingdom. And looking at the overview, this is another one where I'll click on the provenance. This is another one that was purchased by the museum on the antiquities market in 1928. So they're able to tell that is from the region of Thebes, likely Deir el-Medina, but because it was purchased on the antiquities market, they don't have detailed provenance information outside of that. So this is one of the issues when you purchase things on the antiquities market and buy things on the antiquities market because you lose a lot of the original context, and that means that you lose information about what the object is and what it might have done. Going to go down further. This is an Ostraca that is a textual plus figural one. And it also dates from the Ramesside period, which is in the New Kingdom, and it's also one of the ones that is on view. So this is another one that the central figure or the main figure is a male deity named Ayun Mutef, which you see here, and then what looks like a male mortal figure that is doing some sort of offering pose. But this is where those sort of draft uh, pieces come in because it looks like this is a kind of first sketch of this type of scene. And if you look, you can see, I think that those orange spots are the tiny traces of color that remain on the Astrakhan. And this is another one where they know the archaeological dig that it came from, so they know it came from Thebes. And so the fact that it wasn't directly purchased on the antiquities market, but they know who excavated it and when, and then the person who excavated it donated it to the museum. After that kind of gives them a little bit more detailed info about not just that it was found in Thebes, but where in Thebes it was found. In this case, the Valley of the Kings. And actually, I will, so I can just gonna zoom in a little bit, partly because I do want to see. Yeah, so it looks like these are part of the original traces of color that were on the object. So this kind of just gives you an idea, but that's why like the hieroglyphs because these are the full hieroglyphs, not one of the shorthand scripts. This is like in their draft form, so they're more outlined and sketched out. But if you look like this is that Sa Ra, son of Re, which makes sense because this is the outline, I think, of a cartouche, which we've talked about, one of the royal titulary names. This is another figural one with a one thing of trying to figure out if that text is full hieroglyphic or one of the shorthands. I think it's one of the shorthands. But this is also from the Ramesside period within the New Kingdom. But what's interesting is that you have a image of the profile of a Ramesside ruler here. And then it's imposed on that are these two standing figures here. So it's just kind of, again, gives you a glimpse of people in ancient Egypt and those different domains. And I'm gonna see. I don't know enough of the ancient Egyptian scripts to be able to tell you exactly what that text says. I'm just gonna zoom into a little bit, see if there's anything that I recognize, which I don't see. Um, we're gonna keep going. This is an interesting one. So this um, is there's actually both of these sides are covered. So we have on this first side, we have the pictorial feature, which is a royal ruler. Um, so a pharaoh, because this dates to the Ramesside period within the New Kingdom as well. And by that point, rulers were given the title of pharaoh. Um, we see him stabbing some sort of animal, which this says it is a lion. But then what's interesting is they have the other image, which shows you the back of the Ostracan, and there is a hymn or a royal hymn on its back. So this is an example where you have kind of both in one. And this is, at least according to the Metropolitan's info, this is probably one of those like trial sketches, particularly for the figural elements, because this is one where um it looks like, or it was from the Carnarvon Carter excavations in 1920, Thebes in the Valley of the Kings, and then it was given to the museum. So this is one that they have a little bit more information on which excavation it was found in and where it was found. But this is just an interesting scene because you do see this type of scene just in more fancy form and fully sketched out form on royal tomb wall reliefs. So that's one of the things that's really cool about the Astrakhan is that it gives you a view into kind of different stages, or it can give you a view into different stages of the Egyptian artistic process and kind of the steps that would lead up to, a really fancy tomb depiction. We're going to go to page 4, just kind of see. So again, we are still in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Ostraca collection. Ostraca is the word for plural. Ostracan is just one. Or Ostraca is the word for plural. Ostracan is just one. So we have, I'm just going to click on this one because this looks like another draft one that function more as a preliminary sketch. And this is another one that is on view, but going back to my point about how you see this artifact class through the Greco-Roman period in Egypt, this Astrakhan, they think, dates to the late period and to the Saite dynasty in particular. So just kind of to give you a sense. And this, I'm just looking down further, they apparently, because it was done by an excavation that was sponsored by the Metropolitan Museum of Art, they have more detailed info on which site it was found in, and then within that, which tomb of that it was found in, and they even have it was found in like the rubbish. Apparently, it was found in the rubbish of the court within this tomb. Then we're going to go to this one next. So this is an interesting one because this is another Ostracan that dates to the late period and to the Sayite dynasty within that, according to this online catalog information. Um, and what's interesting is that it depicts a door, but it's a sketch of a door. And this is another one that it looks like it was found within an excavation sponsored by the museum in the 1920s. And so they have more, again, more detailed provenance information on this Astrakhan than they have for some others. But I partly picked this one because it speaks to an element that is missing from a lot of Egyptian sites because it was tended to be made of organic materials, which is doors. Things that closed entrances and points of entry off or restricted access to them. So this is just kind of an interesting reminder. It's not a fancy pharaoh. It's not a sketch for um, a fancy tomb relief, but it's literally just a sketch of a door because regular doors and fancier doors were things that were in ancient Egypt too. So just kind of an interesting tie. More. This is interesting because this is another what looks like a practice sketch, or at least to me, what looks more like a practice sketch Astrakhan um, of the god Ta, dating from the Ramesside period within the New Kingdom. Um, but what's interesting is that this Astrakhan has the assumption, the signature of the artist who made this. So this is the signature of someone who lived in Egypt and put his name on this, and the assumption is that this name is the person who made this. Um, so that is just kind of a cool, again, not elite, not royal, but just a little glimpse into the kind of more common Egyptians. And let's see if they have provenance information. So this is looks like another one that came from a known excavation, the Davis excavation, and then this object was given to the museum as a gift later on. And so that's why they're able to say that it comes from Thebes and then within Thebes from the Valley of the Kings, but probably not more detailed than that because this is not an excavation that the museum sponsored, but it was sponsored privately by Theodore Davis, and then some of the stuff that his team uncovered in this particular excavation, he then later gave to the museum. And this is partly, I also clicked on this one because it is actually rare to find individual artist signatures on Egyptian. We kind of conceptualize them as pieces of art, but that's not primarily how the Egyptians would have probably conceptualized them. But it is rare to find the kind of artist signature. So the fact that we do have one here is pretty cool. This is an Astrakhan. Actually, go down a little bit. Okay. Um, this is another Astrakhan with that looks like more like a preparatory sketch drawing. Um, and this one has the basically the main deities of Thebes in the Ramesside period because it comes from the Ramesside period within the New Kingdom. Um, and so we have the god moon. Um, sorry, where are you? Because we have the three deities that are represented here are a moon, Mut, and then their son, Kana, Su. And because this, was meant to be a sketch object, um, it's kind of hard for me. So I think this is a moon here. This is his wife Mutt, and then I think this is Kanasu there. But people who know more um, about artistic depictions and this aspect of Egyptology definitely feel free to correct. And we do actually, from their description, it does tell us a little bit about where these deities are placed. So yeah, to the left, moon, um, and then Mut is behind him with her left hand raised towards him. So I think there, and then yeah, their son Kana Su is that last one there. Um, and this is also because the at least a moon is you see his name captioned in the Astrakhan. So if we were to zoom in onto this chunk here, this here is the caption for this figure telling us who he is. So that's the moon part of his name. And then you can't fully see it, but then you have um Netcher, Nesser, or you have that king of the gods phrase there. This is just a cool one where they think that it's part of the sketch of a dog, which is interesting. Which again they think dates from the New Kingdom, but like that's like whimsical things that you can just kind of see and find when you're looking at Astrakhan. Um, and then here we have an Astrakhan with a donkey. So just very cool um, glimpses into different aspects of ancient Egyptians' lives or lives. All right, I'm just going to see if there's any particular, oh, two more pages, and then I'm going to go to other main place that I talked about where you can find um, Ostraca, which is on the Wiki Commons uh, network. Right under here. Okay, so as I was talking about in my earlier content, one of the many pages that Wikimedia Commons has is images of ancient Egyptian ostraca in different museums. And if you look down here, you can see that they've grouped it both by museums and by certain categories. So ostraca that have the demotic text, ostraca that come from the New Kingdom 19th dynasty, ostraca that come from Elephantine, ostraca that have the hieratic text, and then ostraca that are painted. So I'm just going to kind of click on one of these random ones. So if I wanted to look more at the Elephantine ostraca, These are not all the elephantine ostraca that exist, but they're all the images of the elephantine ostraca that wiki that people have uploaded to Wikimedia Commons, and the images are therefore in the public domain. But there's much more elephantine ostraca than the four that you see here. Um, Same thing for hieratic ostraca. Let's just click on there. So it's giving us 18. There are much more than 18 in existence in the world. These are just the hieratic ostraca that Wikimedia has in the public domain. But it's still cool, because you you get a sense of just the kind of different things that these ostraca can be. So this is in the collections of the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, and it has part of the text and hieratic of the Satire of the Trades, which is a literary text. And that is one of the functions of ostraca that you can see is they were used basically as ancient paper to write literary tales down. So it's just cool. Um, and if I wanted to go to, for instance, Ostraca in the a Egypticious Museum Berlin, so in one of the main museums for Egyptian art in Berlin, Germany. Um, Again, um, these are, what they have in the public domain. And it looks like these are figural. So this is, for instance, they have this according to the records that they've put on for you to access. This this Astrakhan was originally from Deir el-Medina. Um, and it seems to depict a woman holding a religious instrument. Um, in my guess is that that is a deity kind of in animal form because the instruments that she's holding are religious in nature. So she seems to be involved in some sort of religious ritual that is directed towards this waterfowl duck figure. This is another really interesting one, which again kind of speaks to those glimpses of everyday life. This is probably more like a fancier one. But this is seems to be a religious procession of a um, statue of a deity. So you have the deity in like its shrine that's being carried, and then the clergy people that are doing the carrying. So this is what I mean by these ostraca give us these glimpses of different aspects of ancient religion and daily life because you get things like this, and it looks like they have hieroglyphs with a caption, probably naming at least one of the deities that this religious procession is about, because I think the caption there relates to this figure here. Right. And then also the Los Angeles County Museum of Art has a fair amount of ostraca in their collection. And this is helpful because a lot of the museums have digitized their collections, but not every museum has. So you do sometimes have some museums that you can't digitally search their collections, but Wiki Commons has these pages of at least some of the objects that are in their collection, so you can kind of see them that way. Um, this is another ostraca that shows a man worshiping a tree or doing some sort of religious ritual towards a tree. From the information that they are giving us, it says this object was a gift, which means that they probably don't have a lot of information on the provenance and the particular site that this ostraca was originally from. I mean, maybe they do, but if objects to museums are gifts, particularly the earlier back you go, the kind of less information tended to come with that object in terms of its provenance. So this is just like a really cool way to, again, see different aspects of Egyptian culture in a non-formal setting. And this is a really interesting one that is talked about a lot because this is an Ostrakhan that is in the collections of the Manchester Museum of Art. And it seems to, or one of the interpretations of what it's showing is a sketch of a body being deposited in a tomb complex. So the body is, coming down with the coffin there and then being deposited in the burial chamber with the mourners possibly above ground there. So this is just a very interesting depiction because it gives us, if that interpretation is the correct way of reading it, it's giving us a glimpse of an Egyptian funeral that's not a super fancy elite one. It means to go back for a minute. Okay. And I'm just going to kind of do, because the Egyptian Museum of Art in Turin, Italy, also has a fairly large Egyptian art collection. And so they have a fair amount of ostraca in their collection as well. So this is just kind of further categories of that. So I'm just kind of going to click on random one here. So this shows a woman breastfeeding with a duck. So again, you just, it's just kind of fun to think about, especially with the ones we don't have provenance or a lot of detailed provenance information for. It's just kind of fun to think about why they might have been originally created and the possible processes of like how they were trashed after their use life was over and dug up by Egyptologists thousands of years later. So that that's something that's always fascinated me. um Both for Astrakhan but also actually for uh figural art that is still in situ in different spots in Egypt that more recent archaeological work is being done for. Flickr is actually a really good resource. So this is a Flickr account which shows you some of the ostraca that are in the collection of the Egyptian Museum of or the Egyptian Museum of the University of Leipzig, or Leipzig in Germany. So starting here, just kind of to give you a sense, and the gentle or the person who took these is, or at least some of these is Hans Orlerman, and it looks like it's not just the Egyptian Museum of Leipzig because as they go further, it's naming different museums. But while I am here, this is something else, a really cool resource on Flickr. So the Egypt Exploration Society is a society that was founded originally in the 19th century. And they are going through a process that's basically continuous, where they are updating, no, um, they are updating their um, collections. They've digitized their collections and they're updating them onto Flickr. And normally their logo comes up, so I'm not sure why it's not doing that for me, unless maybe I need to do group. All right, so there we go. Possibly, maybe? Yes. Okay, so this is their home page for what they have digitized so far in their collections. I have set my default language on my computer to German to improve my efforts to learn German and my comprehension. So that is why you see these headings in German, but you can switch it to English, or if your computer setting is already in English, then you'll get them in English. Um, so what they've done, and probably especially if like you're first looking at the site and kind of dipping your toes, is to look at their albums because they have, it seems like that's how they've mainly uploaded images. So this is all of their Saqqara sacred animal necropolis object cards from 1968 to 1969 that they've scanned, digitized, and uploaded, and then you can um, digitally look at them one by one. This is just a really cool resource because what they have is they have, as part of this digitization process, they have original excavation photos of some sites. Um, so for instance, some of their work that they've done at Dendra, these are glass plate negatives that that are in their collections from 1897 to 1898. That was led by Petrie. And they have scanned those negatives and glass plate negatives and then digitized them and loaded them into this album. So it's just pretty awesome because you can really get a kind of sense of the original context of a lot of these objects, which is pretty awesome. So this looks like one that they've just found and maybe have not removed yet, because it still looks like it's kind of in the context of a larger structure. They also have, and this is where I particularly like to go. A, a lot of the original or a lot of the early work on the royal tombs at Abydos was done in the 19th and early 20th century, and part of that work was done under the auspices of the Egypt Exploration Society. And so those excavations are part of what's in their collections and that they've digitized and uploaded for people to flip through. So these two here are focusing particularly on the area of the royal tombs. And then these are you're kind of getting more into their general sites of Abydos, but not the particular, or not necessarily, but the particular section of el Quab. So I'm just going to kind of randomly click on this first one. Um, so like this image here is a negative that was originally taken by Petrie or someone on that original expedition of the part of the general area of the royal tombs looks like before they did a lot of digging and really got down to what was there below. So this is just like really cool because you get a sense of what these sites looks like when they were first getting re-uncovered. Um, so it's just awesome. So you can just see. You also you do have to look a little bit harder and kind of devote a little bit more detective work to it. But a lot of the Egypt Exploration Society archaeological work was published in terms of like records of the expeditions and the digs, and you can find at least a few of those publications on the Internet Archive. So as I said, it does take a little bit more kind of detective and deep digging, but if you go to the Internet Archive, it is possible to uncover like some of Petrie's excavation um, volumes of like the work that he did at Abydos that he then published in like his lifetime. And this is another one where we do have a set of human remains here because this again, we're looking at the royal tomb area at Abydos. So that is what that is an actual arm of we think of a pharaoh or elite person. So, that was person that did once exist and was living. And I think the consensus is that we just have the bracelet because that was like the shiny thing, and we don't know what happened to the arm. What I'm trying to find, which of course it's not showing up. Um, but again, because now we're getting into one of like the kind of sites. This is the site of Mahasana, which is on the kind of outskirts of Abydos, which is largely a grave site. So again, I hope that the people represented in what we see, are getting the offerings and kind of things that they want in the next world, if that's where they are, because I don't want to lose sight of the fact that these people that were once living and, had dignity as human beings. But what I'm trying to find in particular, which of course I've found multiple examples of before, and now none of them are showing up where I want them to, but is on some of these grave original photos, you can see impressions from different organic objects that they found, like basket fibers or other fibers that they haven't yet, like they've just uncovered it. And so you can still see the fibers and like the trace amounts of that organic object in the excavation photo. And that's what I was trying to find in particular to show you guys because that's just like very cool. Um, I'm just plugging my computer in because it's about to go. All right, so I am back, and I think I'm actually going to stop and hopefully stay tuned for more content.